This is a rechargeable lithium-ion battery designed for DIY projects. They sent it to me to review for free, but they haven't paid me for this review, so my opinions remain my own. Alright, inside the box we have this guy here. It says Rapthor 5 amp hour or 5,000 milliamp hour 24 volt battery. So it's kind of small, diminutive. It's pretty dense though, and it comes with a charging cable and a little connection block. So they have this block where you can put cables inside and then snap them down. I don't believe it has any type of circuit breaking functionality. It's simply put some cables in like these guys, snap them to some other cables, and you're connected. Alright, so the claim is that this guy has built-in short circuit protection, overcharging protection, under voltage protection, and so forth. And it comes with an external power charger. This guy here says its output is 25.2 volts, 1 amp. So it basically just is a constant voltage charger. So at 25 volts and 1 amp, that's basically 25 watts. If this guy is a 24 or 25 volt battery at 5 amps, that's about 120, 125 watt hours. So I'd expect this guy at 25 watts to charge this fully in about 4 to 5 hours. Now, the cables here have some protective coverings, like I think it's just shrink wrap that's been shrunk over them, so that they don't touch each other and short out. And so it'll be up to you to connect them to whatever your application is for this 24 volt battery. Now, I've seen a lot of these at 12 volts, but this is the first one I've looked at that's 24 volts. And they include a little user's guide here. Okay, out of the box from the factory, I'm getting 23.2 volts. So this DC barrel connector is also live. It's also 23.2 volts. So I think that essentially if you have a device that just plugs in with one of those, it will just automatically work with that and you won't need to use these wiring. So I think this is both an in and an out port for the BMS. So the manual and the sticker here say that the output voltage is going to be somewhere between 18 and 25 volts, depending on if the battery is fully discharged or fully charged. And they say 7 amps maximum. And for input for DC, they say 1 to 2 amps is your charging speed. So the manual also says we should charge this before the first use. So when you plug it in, this green light turns on. I believe when I plug this into the wall, that's going to turn red. While charging the battery, this light is red. My impression is that when it turns green, it means the battery's fully charged and it got up to voltage. The power factor on this charger is 0.56, so it's not a super efficient charger from a power factor standpoint. So it is drawing 27.3 watts, so it's probably delivering 25, 26 watts into the battery. I've reset the watt hour counter. We'll see how many watt hours goes into the battery from the factory. Alright, so I have this XT60 style connector here that I want to connect to the battery. We are going to try out their included little snappy adapter with this wire here, and it says 14 AWG on it. So that feels like it crimped onto there pretty good. Yeah, those wires feel like they're connected. I guess I'll find out when I hook them up to the battery. Well, just kind of putting some probes in there, I'm seeing 1 to 2 ohms at certain points in time. So the nice thing about this is you can put in one wire and crimp it and it holds it in place and you don't have to worry about the other wire touching it and shorting out, like if you're trying to solder the ends of the wires together or something. Alright, I was able to pull this tubing off the end of the wires. It's 16 AWG silicone sheathed. I just stripped a little bit of the wire, put it in, snapped it in place, and it's holding in pretty well. So as soon as this battery's done charging, we'll be ready to test it. My plan is just to leave this connector permanently armed the end of these wires, kind of to keep them apart and keep them safe from sparking or touching anything. Alright, I'm getting 24 volts from the battery here, so it looks like that connector is connecting through. Alright, the battery's done charging. This light turned green. It took 40 watt hours to charge the battery up from, out of the box from the factory. Now, if you were to leave this charger plugged in with just nothing attached, it draws very little power, like less than my meter can detect, so it doesn't have much of a vampiric load. So I plugged the battery into my battery discharger. It currently has 25.4 volts. I'm going to set a cutoff voltage of 18 volts because that is the minimum voltage listed on the battery itself on the front panel. Now I am going to discharge this at 5 amps. That seems like a reasonable draw. It's a 1C draw for a 5 amp battery. They say max 7 amps. I don't want to hit it right up to the max, so I'm just going to say, hey, let's draw 5 amps out of this battery. Okay, so it is discharging and it is drawing 5 amps out of the battery. So the current battery voltage is 24 volts and it's delivered 12 milliamp hours so far. So we're looking for this to get up to 5,000 or greater to meet that 5,000 milliamp hour capability. Now if it hits 45, 48, that's pretty good all in all. If it goes above 5,000, great. Alright, so 23 volts, 5 amps, this is doing north of 100 watts coming out of the battery. The fan on the discharger is turned on to dissipate the heat from that. So I have the time-lapse camera watching this just in case the battery shuts off power before it hits 18 volts. And that way we'll have a record of how many milliamp hours it's delivered before it shuts off power. So it's at 268 milliamp hours so far. So theoretically, this should be able to run for about an hour at 5 amps if it's a 5 amp hour battery. In practice, it probably will go a little sooner than that. I don't expect to get the full 5 amps out at the 1C rate, but the battery might surprise me. We'll see. Alright, the battery's been discharging for about 30 minutes, and it's put out 3.1 amp hours so far. It is looking like 104 degrees at the very top of the battery here. It's warm, but not very warm. So, it's definitely more than ambient. Inside, you can see it looks like there's dual 18650 cells in there. So it's perfectly comfortable to hold in my hand. It looks like there's this one hot spot right there, which I suspect is the electronics for the BMS. But, 105 degrees Fahrenheit is about the highest I've seen here. So it seems to be handling a 5 amp discharge pretty darn well. The discharger here is putting out a lot of heat as well because it's discharging all that power as heat. But the battery seems to be working very well at this discharge rate. Okay, the battery discharger is done. That means that the battery hit 18 volts. Now right now it's popped back up to 19.24 volts and it has delivered 4.6 amp hours at the 5 amp draw. So that's pretty good. That's pretty close to the 5 amp hour rating, and it hasn't actually shut down yet. Alright, I've changed the battery discharger. We're going to try to get down to 14 volts. Hopefully the battery's BMS will shut things down before it gets that low. And I've gone down to 3 amps just because I don't want to stress the battery too much because, most of it's been discharged. Okay, so off we go. We've reset the counter of amp hours, but we're going to have to add to that 4.6 amp hours anything we do now as battery capacity. You might notice the battery discharger is dark. That means that the battery has successfully shut down power when the voltage got too low. We'll have to check the time lapse to see exactly how much power got out before it did that. So testing the leads here, the battery voltage is 12.57 volts. So it looks like it shut down the current coming out, but then it reset itself and is now letting voltage come back out again. but it's definitely well lower than it should be. So it looks like maybe the cutoff was, you know, real close to that 14 volt level. All right, let's plug it into the charger and see how much power it takes to charge this guy up from completely discharged. All right, currently it is drawing 21 watts and charging the battery. With the charger putting current into the battery, the voltage has climbed quickly. We're at 18.2 volts DC, so we're basically at the battery minimum voltage now, and it is charging the battery up. All right, the light's turned green. It's gone to 0 watt draw. To fully recharge the battery, it took 120 watt hours, or somewhere between 120 and 130 watt hours. All right, so the battery passed the low voltage BMS turnoff test, and it has been fully recharged, so it's, you know, high voltage now, about 25 volts, a little higher. And now it's time to do the over voltage protection turnoff test. You might notice I'm doing this outside because if it fails the test, it could just burst into flames. So we have a power supply here, and it's set currently to 25.1 volts. No current is flowing. When I adjust that up high, well, look, it just worked. It just turned off. All right, so no current is flowing at 25 volts. As I start increasing the voltage, it starts charging the battery. You know, so it's charging in at 1 amp. And as I increase the voltage more, it just turns off. So it stops drawing current. Well, you know, 0.02 amps. So I think it's testing the voltage here. And so the voltage got too high. The BMS turned it off. It acted very quickly, so I'm pretty happy with that result. So yeah, that thing will prevent the battery cells from being overcharged. So that's a good thing. I was all set up with the time-lapse camera thinking I'd have to charge the battery for a while before that kicked in, but it just kicked in and worked. Alright, so I've been very impressed with this little guy, mostly just because it met all of its actual specifications, which is more than I can say for a lot of budget lithium-ion batteries you can buy. It delivered 4.6 amp hours when I dropped it down to 18 volts. It might deliver the full 5 amp hours if you're willing to go a little bit lower than that. The under voltage protection works, the over voltage protection works. Those are the kind of the two key things to kind of prevent fires and run away and destroying your battery and stuff like that. Includes this nice little connector block, easy to use. It comes with a charger, relatively low cost for what you get. So if you need a 24 volt battery, you know, 24 volts, 5 amp hour battery, this guy works pretty well.